Okay, in Tanya, we're on chapter 15, Perek Tezvav, and the top of Tanya, the English Times, is page 40. At the bottom is page 64. Okay? So, Alter Rebbe finished explaining the tzaddik and the Beinani. The Russia will leave out. The tzaddik and the Beinani. The tzaddik is one that kills the Yetzer Hara. The complete tzaddik is one that transformed the Yetzer Hara to Yetzer Tov. Beinani, on the other hand, cannot kill the Yetzer Hara. He has to be born with that ability. What a Beinani does is he fights and he fights and fights the Yetzer Hara, and he never gives in. Not in thought, not in speech, and not in action. Nevertheless, Alter Rebbe said, the Beinani should still try to despise evil. He should try to be a tzaddik, even though he's not able to, because you have to be born with that ability to be a tzaddik. Nevertheless, he says your second nature becomes nature. And not only that, if Hashem sees you're really trying, Hashem will put the neshama of a tzaddik impregnated in you, and then you'll also be a real tzaddik because of the other person's neshama. Okay, that's where we're up to now. He says now, and therefore the Alter Rebbe explained in Perek Yudalid, that's why the oath which is administered to the neshama is tihi tzaddik va'al tihi rasha. Try to be a tzaddik, even though you can't, but try. But at least al tihi rasha, don't be a rasha, be a beinani. Because otherwise, Alter Rebbe says it's redundant. If you're a tzaddik, you're not a rasha, seemingly. The Alter Rebbe says no, you can not be a tzaddik and still not be a rasha. You can be a beinani. Okay, so now in Perek Tezvav he says like this. Now we can understand the Gemara in Chagiga brings down the pasuk like this. It says in the pasuk, "V'shaftem v'reisem," you should return and see the difference between tzaddik l'rasha, the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, bein eved elokim la'asher lo avodah. Okay, there's a pasuk in Micha, in Malachi. I'm sorry, a pasuk in Malachi. The pasuk says like this: you should return to see the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, and one that serves God and one that doesn't serve God. So the Gemara in Chagiga asks the question that seemingly is redundant. The pasuk says, look at the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, one that serves God and one that doesn't. Seemingly, it's repeating. If you're a tzaddik, you're serving God. You're a rasha, then you're not serving Hashem. Why is the pasuk repeating itself? So the Gemara answers like this: that no, I'm sorry. Okay, let me first explain outside what the Gemara says. So the Gemara answers the difference between Oved Elokim and Loi Avodai. The Gemara in Chagiga says the following: what's the difference between one who serves Hashem and one that doesn't? And the Gemara says the following statement: one who learns the Gemara 100 times, reviews it 100 times, it's called not serving God. If you learn it 101 times, 101 times, then you're called Oved Elokim. So basically what the Gemara is doing is just explaining the difference between one who serves God and one who doesn't serve God. Listen, Alter Rebbe is going to explain this phenomenally, but there's a famous Gemara, but it's very, very deep concept of the Gemara. The Gemara says, you know what means not serving God? You review your learning 100 times. It's called not serving God. You learn it 101 times, then you become what's called serving God. And the Gemara says, what's the difference? And the Gemara gives an example of a donkey market. That if you rent a donkey to travel a mile, it's $1. If you go a little bit over the mile, it's already $2, even though you didn't go 2 miles. What is the Gemara explaining? The Gemara explains like this. I'm going to explain it outside, and then we'll see the way the Alter Rebbe explains this thing that we're talking about. The Gemara is saying, in those days, because nothing was written in books, it was all oral, for people to remember what they learned, they reviewed it 100 times. That was natural. Their habit was to review the Gemara 100 times. And the Gemara says, if you're serving Hashem with your nature, with your habits, you're not doing any sin. You're not the Rasha. But you're called Loi Avoda, you're not called serving God. When do you become serving God? Eved, Loi Avoda, Eved Elikim, is when you go above and beyond your nature. What the Alter Rebbe is explaining the Gemara in depth. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining, if a person serves Hashem with their natural behavior, it could be a perfect behavior. You could do everything right. But you're serving Hashem with your nature and habits, you're called not serving God. You want to become an Eved Elikim, you want to become one who serves God, then you have to go above and beyond your nature. Why is that? So the explanation is, we are finite. Hashem is unlimited, infinite. Mathematically, finite can never reach infinite. Finite can never reach infinite. Because it's infinite, then we're finite. There's only one way of being able to reach the infinite as a finite being, relatively speaking. And that is when a person breaks their nature. If a person breaks their nature because they broke their nature, they're reaching the infinite. Yes, they were limited, but relatively speaking, in their system, they broke their nature, they reached the infinite. And like we learned many times, that's the concept of going out of Mitzrayim. What does Yetzias Mitzrayim mean in a practical level? Mitzrayim means Meitzor Ugvul, boundaries and limitations. Yetzias Mitzrayim means a person going out of the boundaries and limitations. What are the limitations of a human? Limitations of a human is their nature. That's why people who work overtime get paid more. We always gave the mashal, a teacher is able to teach the class from 9 to 12 and more or less control them. The bell rings at 12. From 12 to 12:05 is harder to control them than the whole 3 hours before. Why? It's only 5 minutes. Because the kids are used to the fact that they sit 3 hours to learn. You want to go above and beyond the 3 hours? That's breaking your nature. That's very difficult. That is the way the finite reaches the infinite. And that's what the Gemara is saying. It's not the tzaddik and the rasha. The tzaddik and the rasha is one level. And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain this in a different way. Between Eved and Lakim Lo Yavodi is not the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain these are two levels of a beinani. First, the pasuk says, look at the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha. Then he says there's another difference in a beinani between a beinani who's called serving God and a beinani who is not serving God. The beinani, as Alter Rebbe will explain, doesn't sin. Not thought, not speech, and not action. A perfect Jew. But he's called not serving God. Why? Because it's all habit, it's all nature by him. And therefore, he's a Beinani. He's a perfect Jew. He doesn't sin. But he's not called serving God. Which means, just to give a picture of what this means on a practical level. Somebody who's accustomed to learning 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day, they sit and they learn. That is their nature. When they sit and learn 10 hours a day, they're called not serving God. They're not a Russian. They're holy, but they're not breaking their nature. A person who learns 10 minutes a day and one day says, you know what? I'm going to break myself. I'm going to learn 15 minutes a day. All he's learning is 15 minutes a day. But the fact that he broke his nature, he is called Oved Elokim. He's called serving God. He tapped into the infinite. The person learning 10 hours a day, he didn't tap into the infinite. He's a great person. He's a Beinoni, but he didn't tap into the greatness. And let's see this inside. And the third line of the paragraph. Shahafish bein Oved Elokim leTzadik. What's the difference between Oved Elokim and the Tzaddik? Sha'oved hu lashon hoive. Oved is present tense. He is serving God, not served, serving. Shu be'emtzo ha'avoda. He's in the middle of the work. She melchama, what's middle of the work? She melchama im ha'yetzer, which is the battle together of the Yetzer Hara. There's gathered all of to be victorious over the Yetzer Hara. To drive it out from the city, which is the body. That it should permeate and dress into the limbs of the body to control them. Is take a lot of work. It's a big effort. To constantly battle with it, but that's the Beinoni. In other words, the Rebbe says, Tzaddik is not called Oved Elokim. The tzaddik is called Eved Hashem. He reached it already. He got there. Oved Elokim means he's in the middle of the work. He's working. He's working. He's serving Hashem. And therefore, that refers to the Beinoni, who's in the middle of fighting with the Yetzer Hara. But the tzaddik, he says, Nikra Eved Hashem b'shem HaTorah. A tzaddik, on the other hand, is called, that's his designation, he's called past tense. Why? When you say somebody is a chacham, somebody is wise, it doesn't mean he's becoming wise. It means he's already wise. Melech, a king. It doesn't mean he's becoming a king. He means he was a king. So what is Eved Hashem? It says by Moshe Rabbeinu. V'yamasham Moshe Eved Hashem. What does Eved Hashem mean? He already reached it. Shekvar nasa chacham melech. He already became a chacham or a king. Kach said the same thing to tzaddik. Kvar avad v'gomer legamri avodas v'milchama. He's completely finished his battle with the Yetzer Hara to the extent he drove out the Yetzer Hara. David HaMelech says his heart is hollow within him, meaning he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. He doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. Okay, so the Rebbe says like this. The pasuk says, look at the difference between the tzaddik and the Rosh. Oved Elokim. So the Rebbe said, what's the difference between the tzaddik and Oved Elokim? A tzaddik is one who already killed the Yetzer Hara. He's already called Eved Hashem. He already became one with Hashem. The Beinoni is called, this higher level of a Beinoni is called Oved Elokim. He's in the middle of the battle. He's working in the battle to not allow the Yetzer Hara to control his body. And now he says, so Oved, and therefore the Rebbe says like this. The pasuk says, look at the difference between tzaddik and rasha. And now the pasuk is saying two levels of a Beinoni. There's a level of a Beinoni that's called Oved Elokim. He is called serving God. And then you have a second level of a Beinoni, a perfect Beinoni, but he's called Loi Avoda. He's not serving God. What does that mean? It means like this. Well, the Beinoni is Kamkin Shtei Madreges. The Beinoni also has two levels. Oved Elokim and Asher Loi Avoda. What do you mean Loi Avoda? So then, why isn't he a Rasha? He says, Afo Pikain. Ain't a Rasha, he's not a Rasha. Why isn't he a Rasha? Kilei Avad Miyam of Shum Aveda Kala. He didn't transgress any sin. In other words, you could be a perfect Jew, and then Tanya says you're not called serving God. Why? You're a perfect Jew. You are serving Hashem 100% of the time. But it's all natural. You're not breaking your nature. If you're not breaking your nature, you're still finite. You are still limited. You will never reach the infinite level of God. V'gam, not only did he not transgress any sins, v'gam kiyim kol ha-mitzvahs, he kept all the mitzvahs. She'ef shelei l'kaima, that he's able to keep. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam, especially learning Torah, which is the most difficult thing. V'lei pasik pulmin megirsa, his mouth never stopped learning. So the question is, why isn't he a Nevid Elokim? Why is he called Lo Yavadeh? He says very simple. He doesn't fight. It's all natural by him. He's like Dr. was going to say. The guy's a natural masmid. He's a bookworm by nature. He's not. He has a cold personality. He's not into women. He's not into all these things. But that's his nature. So the guy could be a Beinoni, but he's called not serving Hashem. What is the definition of serving God? It's a remarkable concept. You think about it. The definition of serving Hashem is one who fights with himself to become better. He breaks his nature. Because very simple. A natural person, a limited, finite human being, can never reach the infinite God. The only way Hashem allows us to do it is by going above and beyond our nature, which within our realm is called infinite. It's not real infinite because we're still limited. But relatively speaking, to our nature and habit, breaking the nature is tapping into the infinite. Like we said, that's Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's what makes a person Eved Elokim. If a person has to fight with himself to put on tefillin, you have to fight with yourself to learn, to ben shlich, to give tzedakah, but you have to fight with yourself. You should know that's a remarkable level. Obviously, if you win the battle, then you become Eved Elokim. And the guy that does it naturally, Lo Yavadeh. When a chassid came to the Tzemach Tzedek, the famous story, a chassid came to the Tzemach Tzedek and said, Rebbe, I have a big problem. I don't want to learn. I don't want to learn. What should I do? So the Tzemach Tzedek answered his famous answer to him. I have a bigger problem than you because I do want to learn. I love learning. So Tzemach Tzedek said to this guy, my friend, because I love to learn, when I learn, I'm not breaking my nature. Look how lucky you are. You don't want to learn, so go learn. You're breaking your nature. You're tapping into the infinite. So Tzemach Tzedek said, I have a bigger problem than you because I can't tap into the infinite with my learning, and you could. And this is the key to the whole, one of the major keys of Tanya, of a person realizing breaking your nature. That means a person that learns 10 minutes a day might be greater than a person who learns 10 hours a day. Because this person is fighting with himself to learn, and this person isn't. This person is doing it naturally. And he says, what's the problem? Three lines in the end of the page. He doesn't do any battle with the Yetzer Hara. To win over it, to fight it, and to be conquering it. Hashem, like he said before, how could the Beinoni overcome the Nefesh Habamis? Because there's a Kedusha of Hashem coming into the person. I'm sorry. The mind controlling the heart. Why doesn't he fight? says, this person, the Yetzirah doesn't get in his way. To stop him from learning. You have a person who doesn't have to fight with the Yetzirah. By the way, this doesn't have to mean in everything. In certain, like he says, a person who is a serious student, he's a bookworm. He just loves to read, loves to learn. Because he's what's called, what is he said in English? No, he's so disposed, organically so disposed that he's a depressed person, like very serious. He doesn't have a desire for women. He's a cold person. There are people that have tivus for women. There are people that don't have tivus for women. And same thing with other pleasures of the world. He's just not into it. You find people that are just not into physical things, not into food, they're not into sport, they're just not into it. They just like to sit and study. That person is called lo yavadai because he's not fighting. In order to reach the Eved Elikim, meaning that you're in the middle of fighting, in the middle of the work, to be connected to Hashem, that's only when you change your nature. And every person could do that. You learn 5 minutes a day, you learn 6 minutes a day. The only thing is, when 6 minutes becomes your habit, then you went backwards. Now you're not lo yavadai. So then you're going to have to learn 7 minutes a day. That becomes natural. You're going to have to learn 8 minutes a day. And again, it's not even how much. The whole thing that the Rebbe is saying, it's not how you learn 10 hours extra. No. You learn a little bit extra and you break your nature. That's what it's all about. That's the ultimate level of serving Hashem. So therefore, the Rebbe says like this. The passage that says, look at the difference, sit and look at the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha, that's a tzaddik and a rasha. Then it says, between one who serves Hashem and doesn't, is not referring to a tzaddik and a rasha. He's referring to two levels of a Beinani. A Beinani is also called Eved Elikim because he's in the middle of the work. A tzaddik is called Eved Hashem, past tense. He already got there. Beinani didn't kill the Yetzer Hara yet. So the Beinani is still fighting. As long as he's fighting, it's good. Then he's a Eved Elikim. He's serving Hashem. Once something becomes habitual, it becomes a habit, it becomes your nature, you go back to lo yavadai. Therefore, because this person is just a cold-blooded person, and tzarech is beinin kol kach b'dulas Hashem, he doesn't have to meditate into the greatness of Hashem. Lahelid mibinasi ruach das v'yetz Hashem, to give birth from his understanding, b'meichin his mind, lishamer, to be careful, lavid al mitzvahs, to transgress negative commandments, or avos Hashem b'libay. The dafka bebikim mitzvahs to Talmud Torah. This person doesn't have to fight. This guy doesn't have to fight because he's just not interested in doing all these things. Ella, for this person, this person who's cold-blooded mammal, like they say, this is his nature. That love, natural love, he doesn't have to reveal, he doesn't have to fight, he doesn't have to do anything. Therefore, he's not called serving Hashem at all. Why? Because this hidden love that the person has, that's not what he accomplished. The natural instinctive love that a Jew has to Hashem, that's not what you did. That's there in your neshama. So what did you accomplish? Accomplishment is when you fight your nature, you change your nature, you transform your nature. And like it says, this is an inheritance. So therefore, what battle are you doing? You're not fighting. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe says number one, breaking your nature, Ovid Elikim. Not breaking your nature, Lo Yavad. And he says, sometimes a person is not an inborn bookworm. He's not a masmid. He doesn't have this diligence of studying. He's not a studious student. He says, even somebody who's not by nature a masmid. But he trained himself to learn tremendously. And now becomes a second nature. Again, and then again, he's becoming lo yavode. Why? Because right now, it's naturally instinctive. Unless if you want to learn more than your nature. But the Alter Rebbe is saying what we mentioned before. Once you break your nature, and then that becomes your nature, then you're not Ovid Elikim anymore. You're not Ovid Elikim because you're not fighting. You have to constantly change our nature. And that's why, based on this whole thing, we can understand that the concept of status quo in Yiddishkeit is no good. If a person keeps doing habitual mitzvahs, just his habit, that's all he's doing. He's doing his natural midas because that's what he grew up as. And you're not interested in growing, then you're really not interested in becoming Ovid Elikim. You're not serving God because you're not fighting with you. You're not breaking your nature. You're not breaking your limitation. You're not going out of your Mitzrayim. If you're not going out of your Mitzrayim, Hashem says you're not reaching me. You can't reach me in a limited form. The only way a Jew can reach Hashem is he reaches the infinite. How do you reach the infinite within ourselves? Because 15 minutes a day is also limit. An hour a day is also limitation. But in our character, we break it. That is called serving. That's called reaching the infinite. And again, therefore, it's not so much, so to speak, what you're doing. It's more like how you do it, so to speak. Are you breaking your nature or you're not breaking your nature? That's what it's all about. And then the Alter Rebbe is, okay, we're going to leave it here because now the Alter Rebbe starts a whole new thing about what? It's still Perek Tezvav. It's still the concept of serving Hashem versus not serving Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, we're just going to mention for a second outside. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain that's the difference between 100 times and 101 times. When the Gemara says the person that serves Hashem is learning it 101 times, and the one that's not serving Hashem learns it 100, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it's not the one extra time that you learn. That's not what makes it or breaks it. Because the nature was to review it 100 times. When you do it 101 times, you're breaking your nature. It's not because it's 100th more. It's you're breaking your nature, and that's what happens. Anyway, everybody have a good Shabbos. Don't forget this week's Shabbos Mevarchim. Everybody should have a very good week.
You too, Rabbi. Thank you.
Monday night, 8:30, Parsha.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you.